Alright guys, unfortunately I just made a video and now I've got to record again, but here's the idea. Instead of writing all this stuff down, I'll just use what I already have created. What I was talking about here was the difference between a parenthesis and a bracket. Notice this has a parenthesis, so it's going to be an open dot. If it has a bracket, then it needs to be a closed dot. So this says that x is on the interval from negative infinity all the way to 4. So here's where all the x's reside. From 4 all the way to negative infinity, anywhere in there. And I write it in set builder notation. So this, the way you read this is the set of all x such that x is less than 4. So here's where all my x's are less than 4. Strictly less than because it's an open dot. So there's no equal to on there. Next, here's an interval from 2 to 6. Notice they are closed dots this time. So I've got brackets. Starts at 2, ends at 6. Set builder notation is the set of all x such that 2 is smaller than x and x is smaller than 6. So 2 is smaller than x. All my x's are to the right of 2, but all my x's are to the left of 6. So my x is between 2 and 6. This one right here says that x is smaller than 1 or x is bigger than 5. So x is smaller than 1, open dot because it's strictly smaller than, or it's bigger than 5, and that's a closed dot because it's bigger than or equal to. Notice when I write it in intervals, my interval goes from negative 1 to infinity. They're both parentheses because this is not a closed dot and that's not a closed dot, so I use parentheses. Union, here's a closed dot, so there's a bracket starting at 5 and going to infinity, again parenthesis because it doesn't actually get there. Okay. Notice in the same way it says or here, I put a union for the interval notation. Also notice that because there's two inequalities and there's two intervals, there's also two lines, right? If there's one line, you have one interval, one inequality. One line, one interval, one inequality. One line, one interval, one inequality. Oh, that's right. My other video ended right here. So, x is any real number. So what that looks like graphed is it can be anything. Anything. As an interval, that means it goes from negative infinity all the way to positive infinity. But the easier way to write that is just this cool little symbol, which means all real numbers. You just put two lines, like that, and then you make an R. Like that. So that's all real numbers. Okay, so really quick. I've got 5 minutes, it looks like. The idea of writing a domain and a range on a two-dimensional graph is a pretty easy concept, really. Your idea for domain is you're using the x-axis. So you're taking this graph right here, and you're crushing it down, and you're just putting it all on the x-axis. So if I did that, it would look something like this. I'd have a dot on the x-axis right here, and then it would go as far this way as maybe somebody would say this point. That's as far as it goes. But that's an arrow, and because it's an arrow, it keeps going on to positive infinity. And this side would also, when it gets crushed to the x-axis, would end up having an arrow pointing to negative infinity. So to write that out actually would be as simple as saying x goes from negative infinity all the way to positive infinity. Or that's all real numbers. Next, talking about the range, if I take this function, and again, the idea is if I take it and I just smash it all down onto the y-axis. Okay, if I just reduce it all to the y-axis. My highest point would be right here, so that's the point I'm talking about, right there. That's my highest y point, or my range, which is 3. And then my arrow would be pointing downward like that, going to negative infinity. So, my range would go from negative infinity all the way to 3, and it would be a bracket because it's a closed dot. Okay, let's keep doing a few more. So this one, if this were on the x-axis, I'd have an open dot at, what, negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 4. So open dot at negative 4, and then this would be at positive 2, So I've got a closed dot at positive 2. like that. So my domain goes, starts at -4, and because it's a open dot, it's a parenthesis, -4, and it goes all the way to +2. Closed dot, so bracket. As far as my range is concerned, that's going to go all the way from here. That's my highest point. If I crush this down onto the y-axis, if everything gets pushed to the y-axis, so that means this is coming here. Everything is being put to the y-axis. Okay, so I'm going to have an open dot here, and it's going to go down, then I'm going to have a closed dot right there. Which means that my range goes from -6, closed dot, so it's a bracket, -6 all the way to -1. -1, and that's a parenthesis. Alright, let's go ahead and do one more real quick. Two more. Okay, so this one, while this looks like it kind of stops going to the left, if it keeps going down, it's going to keep going to the left. That's the point. So how far left will it go? Well, it keeps going left if it keeps going down. So it's going to go as far left as -infinity. And if this keeps going down, it's going to keep going right. So how far right is it going to go? Well, it's going to go as far right as +infinity. This, my range, looks like my highest point is 3, and then it goes down to -infinity. Ooh, the way I should have wrote that is usually smaller numbers to bigger numbers. So, -infinity to 3. Now that's not wrong, but it's just not common. Usually you'll see the negative numbers, or the smaller numbers to the bigger numbers like that. So I'll scratch that out real quick. Okay, let's do number 8. So if I crush this whole thing down to the x-axis, what am I looking at? Well, this is my furthest left point. Right here. That's my furthest left point, which is at -6. And my furthest right point is right here. It's an open dot on 0. So it goes from -6 to 0, open dot, so it's a parenthesis. Next, my lowest dot for the y's is an open dot down here at -6. And it goes up, so open dot here at -6, it goes up to right here, a solid dot, at +5. So it goes from -6 to +5. Alright, that is all the time I got, guys. I hope that video wasn't too rushed. Anyway, if you have questions, come see me in class, and I would love to help you through this. It's something very important. It's going to keep coming back. So just let me know. Thanks.